not clear because he says Acharya, it doesn't say Srinivas Acharya. It's something that must be Advaita Acharya, but it's not. Oh, thank you. Wait a minute. Too high. Oh. I don't need one. You need one actually, because otherwise I don't have 3 hands. You know what I'm saying? Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. I got it. Yeah, it's in the back. The back is J and Nilo. Yay, the very last. Yay and Nilo. Page 91. Yay and Nilo. Premadhana. 91, your hymnal. And Marquise Prabhu. Yes. Can you fly up? Maybe that one up a little more too. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, you gonna play harmonium?
Yeah.
Great.
I'll see if I can find the right key first, though.
How about Larry on the drum? Is that possible? Yeah, we got all these drummers. Even Marquise is there.
What key do you sing it in for?
Try D. Give me a D. Between the 2 black keys is a D. Between the 2 black. That's it. You can do. Yeah. Let's do D. Okay. Oh boy, it's my fault. I got the first.
What page is it?
It's on page 91. 91 of your hymnal. You don't need it? You got it memorized? We have so many books. I spent $120 getting all these books. Yeah. I'm getting a cramp too. Oh, I haven't even started fasting yet and I'm still getting a cramp. Okay, everyone ready? Ye anilo premadana karuna prachu ye anilo premadana karuna prachu heno Prabhu kyota gela chayataku Kaha mora swarup rupa Kaha sanatan Kadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kaha Mora Bhakta Juga Kaha Kavira Eka kale kota gela goranataraj Pasane kuti bo mata
Analepa Shiva Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kotangele Pavo Se Samba Sangira Sangi Je Kolo Vilas Se Sangana Paya Kande Narottama Das Jayanilo Premadana Akaruna Prachu Jayanilo Premadana Karuna Prachu Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chayataku Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. Hare Krishna. The Saparshada Bhagavad Viraha Janata Vilapa, lamentation due to separation from the Lord and his devotees. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das, Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So this is the glorious disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gadadhar Pandit. And we're going to read a little bit about each of them. And I have a special treat for you. The chastisement of Vishikishen. Who knows that story? You've heard it before. Larry, you heard it before? Okay. You probably didn't hear it before. Okay. You may have heard it, but you forgot.
Well, I've heard of the story about the chastisement of Janardhan Das.
All right. So this is quite a remarkable, amazing story, and I'll read it. It's in this book called The Seventh Goswami by Rupa Vilas, which is on this database thing. But now I'm just going to read this introduction to the songbook, which is a glimpse into the life of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now somehow it doesn't give his birth date. Oh, there it is, September 2nd, 1838. Thakur, a glimpse into the life of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This was compiled apparently by Chunanda Swami, but I think he based it on some other writing. Thakur Bhaktivinoda led a life of incessant labor and activity for Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He effected such immense good in the world that his work is only to be compared with the unbounded works of Sri Chaitanya himself and the 6 Goswamis and Srila Prabhupada. It was the spiritual attempts and the divine writings of this person that turned the scale and led the intelligent and educated community to believe in the noble precepts and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. If we look back 180 years, we cannot but be astonished to find how degraded was the condition of the Vaishnava faith that had its pure origin in the deep and majestic spiritual philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. Now let's see, let's go back 180 years. Where does that give us? the latter part of the 19th century, right? What's 180 from 2017?
Roughly 1830.
1837, which is just before his birth. Well, he's thinking of his birth here. So the early part of the 19th century. But before that, the 18th, that's the 1700s, it had become, as he explains here. Even vastly learned pundits could not fathom the super excellent precepts of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, yet due to the incredulity born of the ignorance of uncultured men, the Vaishnava faith had been degraded and was considered a beggar's excuse for living at the expense of society. It was by sheer love for the Godhead that Thakur Bhaktivinoda expounded the deep philosophy which had remained concealed in the pages of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and the Bhagavatam. By his action toward divine service and also by his words, said in simple language to be easily understood by readers in general, he has given this philosophy to the world. It is his writings and his divine unparalleled character that have helped to produce a class of educated and enlightened men who are now proud of their Vaishnava faith and of their acquisition of the spiritual knowledge of the pure and sublime philosophy of Krishna, on which the stern teachings of Lord Chaitanya are based. Now, this was definitely written sometime in the mid-20th century, originally. I just tweaked it. That's why there's no mention of Prabhupada here, but it pertains to him also. Though born in opulent circumstances on September 2nd, 1838, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, who was given the name Kedarnath Dat, Kedarnath is actually a name of Shiva, had to meet many difficulties in his early life. His childhood was spent at his maternal grandfather's house in Birnagar in Ulagran, from where he came to Calcutta at the age of 13 after the death of his father. After he completed his education, he was requested to be present at the time of his paternal grandfather's death. His grandfather, Raj Vallabha Dutt, had been a famous personality of Calcutta and had retired to a lonely place in Orissa to spend his last days as an ascetic. He could predict the future and knew when he would die, since he could commune with supernatural beings. Thakur Bhaktivinoda was present at the eventful time when that great soul passed away, and after receiving his grandfather's instructions, he visited all of the major temples and ashrams of the state of Orissa. He then wrote a little book as a travel guide for pilgrims. He was a great writer. He wrote 6 hours a day, every day, from 10 o'clock to 4 in the morning. 10 p.m. to 4 in the morning. Didn't sleep much. Bhaktivinoda Thakur then entered the educational service and introduced English education into the state of Orissa for the first time. He wrote a small book about all the ashrams of the state and mentioned an ashram which was on his ancestors' property. Quote, I have a small village named Choti Mangalpur in the country of Orissa, of which I am the proprietor. In that village is a religious house which was granted by my predecessors to the holy men as a holding of rent-free land. The head of the institution entirely gave up entertaining such men as chanced to seek shelter on a rainy night. This came to my notice, and I administered a severe threat that his lands would be cruelly resumed. In other words, get out, because he's the owner. He's a victim. He would be a victim. Would be cruelly resumed if in the future complaints of inhospitality were brought to my knowledge. Bhaktivinoda Thakur later took to government service and was transferred to Bengal. In one town, he gave a historic speech on the Srimad Bhagavatam, which attracted the attention of thousands. Now, sometimes you'll see the writings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur compiled from his talks. Well, there's no tape recorders in. Somebody's taking notes in Bengali and then translating it to English. The same thing is true of this pamphlet that's actually been published. I saw it once. Bhagavatam, I forget what it's called, it's precepts or something. Very fascinating. He made the world know what hidden treasures pervade every page of the Bhagavatam, which should be read by all persons having a philosophical turn of mind. He was transferred some years later to a town called Champaran. In this town there was a Brahma Daitya living in a great banyan tree. That's a ghost who used to be a Brahmin. He was living in a great banyan tree, and he was being worshipped by many degraded people. That is a little note. Brahma Daitya is a type of ghost. One day the father of a famous girl scholar came to Bhaktivinoda for alms, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur at once employed him in reading the Bhagavatam under the shade of the banyan tree, which was the abode of the ghost. After 1 month, the Bhagavatam was completed, and then and there, the tree crashed to the ground, and the ghost was gone for good. Everyone was thankful for this act, except the few dishonest persons who were worshipping the ghost. Can you make sure the kitchen door is closed? We seem to be getting cross. Bhaktivinoda's next move was to Puri. The government commissioner was much pleased to get him in his division, and he asked him to watch the affairs of the temple of Jagannath on behalf of the government. It was through Bhaktivinoda's exertions that many malpractices were checked, and the time for offering of foods before the deity was regulated to its extreme punctuality. This was one of his characteristics. He was extremely punctual. He had this whole schedule during the day. He had a watch that he would consult, one of these little round watches, pocket watch. And he was very, very extreme. And so you can imagine, when the offerings get unregulated, that's a sign of Maya, obviously. Thakur Bhaktivinoda was especially entrusted to quell the rise against the government of one Vishikishen, which we're going to hear about presently, who declared himself to be an incarnation of Mahavishnu. During the course of his investigation, Thakur Bhaktivinoda found him to be a hoax and a culprit, and charged him with transgressing government injunctions. He actually threatened to bring down the British government to kill the King of England. It was a big thing at the time. They were the British Raj. So anyway, you'll hear about it. It was amazing. After his trial, the fellow was sentenced to imprisonment for 1.5 years, but he soon died in jail. How he died is amazing. This man was really possessed of unnatural powers, but as they were the outcome of non-spiritual practices, he had to submit to the Thakur when the latter wanted him to do so. Vishikishen was held in dread by the common people, and everyone warned Bhaktivinoda not to admonish him. Okay, we're going to read that later, so I'll skip a little. During his stay at Puri, Thakur Bhaktivinoda devoted much of his time to the discussion of spiritual works and prepared notes on the Vedanta Sutras, which were published with the commentaries of Baladev Vidyabhushan. Now that's the same commentator who did the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhu dedicated the work to him. If you look on the first page, the Prabhu based his commentary much on the commentary of Baladev Vidyabhushan, who was a very, very learned disciple of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He also composed the Kalyana Kalpataru, from which Vibhavari Shesha, one selection, appears in this book. It's a book of songs. This may very truly be termed an immortal work, and it stands on the same level as the divine writings of Narottam Das Thakur. In 1877, he left Puri on government service, and in 1881, he started a well-known spiritual journal called Sajjana Toshini, the satisfaction of the pure devotees. He also published the Sri Krishna Samhita, which revealed to the world the underlying philosophy explaining the spiritual existence of Krishna. This book opened the eyes of educated people to teach them their true relationship with God. It also attracted the admiration of many German scholars, for although the public regarded Krishna as a poetic creation of erotic nature, Bhaktivinoda revealed Krishna as Parabrahman, the supreme transcendental person, the absolute being, on the basis of Vedic evidence. So actually much of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's efforts were at clearing up misconceptions about Lord Chaitanya and Krishna and everything. There was a big fight. There's all of these Upper Sampradaya, some of which still exist. Upper Sampradaya means supposed followers of Lord Chaitanya who actually perverted the message, and there were some lascivious, loose morals, and Bhaktivinoda was constantly fighting them to reestablish the purity and the actual sublimity of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. At the close of his stay in the village of Narayal, he visited Vrindavan. There he had to encounter a band of dacoits known as the Kanjaras. Now here you see his fearlessness. These powerful bandits spread all over the roads surrounding the holy place and used to attack innocent pilgrims. Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought this news to the government, and after many months of struggle, extirpated the bandits from Vrindavan forever. From this time on, Thakur Bhaktivinoda preached extensively in large gatherings, explaining all the precepts of the Sankirtan of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. While staying at Barasat, Thakur Bhaktivinoda met the famous Bengali writer Bankim Chandra. This novelist and playwright had just finished writing a book on Krishna, and knowing Bhaktivinoda to be an authority on topics of Krishna, he gave the manuscript to Bhaktivinoda Thakur to see. This is a special day. disappearance of one of our great acharyas or teachers, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we're reading his biography today. It was full of mundane Western stylized speculations and ideas, but after 4 days of discussion, Bhaktivinoda had the whole text revised by Bankim Chandra to accommodate the pure, supramundane precepts of Lord Chaitanya. During his last year at Barasat, Bhaktivinoda was requested by a noted High Court judge to publish an authoritative edition of Bhagavad Gita with the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as well as his own Bhaktivinoda's translation. The preface, written by Bankim Chandra, expressed his gratitude to the Thakur for his endeavor, and when it was published, the copies were soon exhausted. Then Bhaktivinoda published a unique work called the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, the Nectarian Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada told Gopi Paranadhan Prabhu to translate this, actually, and he did 1 or 2 chapters which were published in BTG in the 70s. I can share that with you if you like. Yeah, and I think it's been completed by now. I forget, probably Sarva Bhavana did. This book dealt with Lord Chaitanya's theistic philosophy and philosophies of Western speculators. The book defeats every other philosophy, point for point, and establishes the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya as supreme. There's another work also, Tattva Viveka, that he wrote that has that format. In 1885, he started a society named Sri Vishwa Vaishnav Raj Sabha, which means the Royal Assembly of the Universal Royal Assembly for Vaishnavas, for the propagation of pure bhakti. Many eminent citizens of Calcutta joined the society, and several committees were organized with assigned duties. Bhaktivinoda was so anxious to see the land of Lord Chaitanya that he applied many times for a transfer to any town nearby. So he's always working for the government here as a minister and various things. Upon not receiving the desired transfer, he formally submitted his resignation from public service, but it was refused.
We should mention that a very high-level government service, and there was a Dr. Ravenshaw, who was the British administrator, and he later on revealed to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he tried to block, because he was such an expert manager, in addition to all of his devotional qualities, he was such an expert manager, they kept promoting him. And this Dr. Ravenshaw was blocking him, Mr. Ravenshaw, and later on they became friends, and he was embarrassed, and he revealed, he said, because if we had had 10 experts like you could have thrown the British out of India. That's the level that he was the magistrate, which was like governor and judge of all of the district of Puri, while managing the Jagannath temple, which 55 offerings a day. So it's just an amazing personality.
Yeah, he became more and more influential as time went on. You'll see that there's some nice things here.
Okay.
But it was refused. They wouldn't let him quit. Then, to his great rejoicing, he obtained a transfer to Krishnanagar, 25 miles from Navadvip, Mayapur. Once stationed at a place near Navadvip, he did not let a single free moment pass without visiting the land of Navadvip. He had once made inquiries about the exact whereabouts of the different places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. He soon discovered that the then city of Navadvip was a town of only 100 years standing. So he was curious to locate the actual birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. He was convinced that the town of Navadvip was not the authentic location, and he at once commenced a vigorous inquiry to find the truth of the matter. Now, this is not mentioned here, but he actually took formal initiation from Vibhani Vihari Goswami, who was in the line, he was bona fide. But as time went on, Vibhani Vihari Goswami, he was partial to this then town of Navadvip as the place, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't accept it, so his own disciple. So there was a rift that developed there, and when Bhaktisiddhanta appeared and became prominent, that rift became a big break. And so you don't hear much about Vibhani Vihari Goswami, but he was his actual initiating guru. Although his most prominent teacher and Shiksha guru was Jagannath Das Babaji, so that's why he's in the line.
Should I mention now, I don't want to, if you're going to read it, about how the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was discovered by Bhaktivinoda Thakur?
There's something in it here. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more that could be said.
I can say briefly.
Go ahead.
He had old British maps, because the Ganga shifts, just like in the Bible, you know, with the star over Bethlehem, this light appeared. Because he was on this side. The Jalungi flows here, his house was here. So across the Jalungi, he saw this light, effulgent light. So he noted the spot. And when he went there the next day, he found it out. The local Muslims said, no, this place is haunted. He said, why is it haunted? He said, because we always hear voices and lights and things are going on there. There were all the different devas as they would pass through the cosmos offering their respects. Then he noted there were 7 hills, small hills, you know, and that's, you know, where the 7 sages took birth there to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime. And the place spontaneously was covered with tulsi. So he got the sense this is the place. So he brought Jagannath Das Babaji to confirm it. And Jagannath Das Babaji at this time was either 98 or 108. They'd lost track of how old he was. And his disciple would carry him in a basket because he was enfeebled, you know. And when they brought him to the place, and he could just feel the Shakti, Jagannath Das Babaji began to dance.
He jumped out of that basket.
Yeah, he was dancing. So this is how the birth cycle is.
And
And later on, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur built that small, it may be in there, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur made a replica of the birthplace of Chaitanya, where, you know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mother gave birth. Later on, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur made a substantial temple. When they were digging the foundation of that temple, they found the original deities of Jagannath Das Mishra, the father of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as described in Chaitanya Bhagavatam. They actually found those deities,
confirming. Yeah.
So I just had to
Thank you, Maharaj. All right, so I'm going to skip a little bit because there's a little summary of that. The year 1895 was the most eventful year in the history of the Vaishnava world before Prabhupada's appearance and coming to America. This was written before. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the prime mover of the events. It was in this year that he officially memorialized the birth site of Lord Chaitanya and brought his true identity and importance before the public eye. Thousands of visitors were present at a function held at the spot. Just after retiring from government service, Bhaktivinoda himself, in a spirit of perfect humility and with a view to giving a firm standing to the discovery, went from door to door to raise funds for the temple. And there's an advertisement or an endorsement by the deputy magistrate in one paper here, asking every Hindu gentleman to give something to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was able to raise the funds to make that small memorial Maharaj mentioned. And then later on, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati built a nice, substantial temple. When you go to Mayapur, you see they have a big mandap there for kirtan and everything. It's very nice. The work of preaching the holy name was also in full swing, and it spread fast into the distant corners of the globe. The Gauranga Smarana Mangala Stotra, which I have in translation, by the way, with a preface in English containing the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya, came out from Bhaktivinoda's pen soon after the discovery of Lord Chaitanya's birthplace and found its place in all the learned institutions of both hemispheres. Well, famously, he sent it in 1896 to McGill University in Montreal. And this was later discovered there by one of Prabhupada's disciples and brought it, and Prabhupada lived in Montreal at a certain point. And they started a temple there. And Prabhupada was very happy to see that, and he said, this is very significant, because that's his birth year. That the Krishna first came to the West in the form of this English, summary of Lord Chaitanya's life and precepts, as well as the Sanskrit poem, Gauranga's summary of Lord Chaitanya's Leela, in the same year he was born. He saw that as presaging his coming to the West, which he did. Then it describes some of his writings. He made annotations of Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita, and gave to the world his Harinam Chintamani, Bhajana Rahasya. Some of you, Harinam Chintamani is very famous. Bhajana Rahasya is very intimate understanding of the Shikshastika, actually. He also edited with commentary Srimad Bhagavat Artamarichi Mala. This is his own, the most famous quotable verses from the Bhagavatam, which all of these books I have. His pen never tired, and it produced many other Vaishnava philosophical works. He would rise at 10 o'clock at night. Now, this is some hint of his schedule. He would rise at 10 o'clock at night, after resting only 2 hours, takes rest at 8 p.m., gets up at 10 p.m., and write continuously till 4 in the morning, every night, composing songs, essays, and books. Most of those works appeared in the Sajjana Toshni mentioned earlier. He would serialize them, obviously. He was equally engaged in writing and in preaching the holy name in many districts of Bengal. His personal appearances at villages had marvelous effects on the people. To maintain the center at Nadia, he built a house at Sri Godrumadri, which is still there. It's part of the whole parikrama. It's very wonderful to visit. Which is called Sri Svananda Sukada Kunj, means the little garden place, which is the giver of happiness and bliss, my happiness and bliss. Svananda Sukada Kunj. Here in this abode, the preaching of Harinam continued in full swing. It was at the beginning of the 20th century that he chose to live at Puri and build a house on the beachfront there. Many honest souls sought his blessings and readily obtained them when he accepted the renounced order of life by taking Babaji initiation from Gaurkishore Das Babaji in 1908. Though he was leading the life of a renounced soul, he could not avoid the men of all description who constantly visited him. All of them received oceans of spiritual training, instructions, blessings. In 1910, he shut himself up and remained in a perfect state of samadhi, or full concentration on the eternal pastimes of the Lord. In 1914, he passed on to the blissful realm of Goloka on the day which is observed as the disappearance day of Sri Gadadhar. That's today. Here we quote a stanza written by about the samadhi of Haridas Thakur, which Srila Bhaktivinoda wrote sometime in 1871. So in Puri, that his samadhi is there, of course, on the beach. You read Chaitanya Charitamrita, he left on the beach. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living there and he wrote this famous stanza. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. Bhaktivinoda predicted, quote, soon there will appear a personality who will preach the holy name of Hari all over the world. It is clearly understood that His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is that personality. And then Achyutananda, he wrote this last part, I offer my humble obeisance to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and of course to Srila Prabhupada. So, we have a little bit of time. I'd like to...
One last thing.
Go ahead.
He
Mahesh.
talks about him and Babaji and the last days.
Yeah.
He would simply sit. He was in trance. They call it Kopa Samadhi. He was completely fixed on meditating on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And he simply, there was a servant, one of his attendants, servants, I don't know, disciple, they probably said servant, who would come and put a chadar on him in the evening and then take the chadar off during the day. He wasn't moving. And that's how he just finally just left his body, just fixed in pastime.
Amazing. Thank you. If you would permit me, Maharaj, we're going to run through this pastime of Vishikishain. It's always my favorite. You know, the chat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was waiting for it.
We're going to go a little over. There's no breakfast, so I have a little extra time. Okay, this is super favorite, and it's nicely told here. This is from Rupa Vilasa's book. The Chastisement of Vishikishain. So this is when he was living in Puri. The Thakur's whole family came to live in Puri. He had many children by this time, and more came. He mentions in his autobiography that his mother, his wife, Ananda Radhika Sadhu Kadu, this is a long biographical letter that he wrote to Lalit Prasad, his eldest son. And all these other relations was all staying there and getting the regular darshan of Lord Jagannath at the temple. The commissioner, Mr. Ravenshaw, was much pleased to get a person of the caliber of the Thakur and asked him to watch over the affairs of the temple of Jagannath on behalf of the government. It was due to the exertion of the Thakur that many bad practices at the temple were curbed, and the offerings to the Lord were regulated to extreme punctuality. Bhaktivinoda was much enlivened by being in Puri, where Lord Chaitanya had passed his last 18 years, and he took every opportunity to visit the sites of Lord Chaitanya's final pastimes and to experience the mood of ecstatic separation from Krishna, which was ever present there. In the first year of the Thakur's stay in Puri, his third son, Kamala Prasad, was born. At this time, the Thakur was given the task of quelling the disturbance caused by a mystic yogi who claimed to be an incarnation of Mahavishnu. A few details of this story are taken from the autobiography of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and all other details are culled from the biographical notes of Lalit Prasad Thakur, the seventh son of the Thakur. I thought he was the eldest, and other biographers. The story is so gripping and dramatic that one may wonder about its veracity. Yet we know that truth is both stranger and more profound than fiction, and confirmation of the events described below can be had from many sources, so many sources that it cannot be denied. The background of the yogi Bhishikashen was that he belonged to the sect called the Atibari Sampradaya, which was started by a person called Jagannath Das. In the beginning, Lord Chaitanya had ordered Jagannath Das. He was a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, so this goes way back. He had ordered Jagannath Das to be a follower of Haridas Thakur, but later Jagannath Das gave up pure devotion and took the shelter of the Mayavad philosophy. Mahaprabhu rejected him, and for this reason he was called Atibari. Apparently that means rejection. The Atibari group was secretive in its practices, and the Thakur states, quote, "This group has many forged books wherein it is written that Chaitanya will again appear. Among them there are some evil-minded people who attempt to imitate Chaitanya or Brahma, and some who imitate Baladev or Krishna." One person known as Bhishikashen, a scoundrel who had developed a little yoga power, was thought to be Mahavishnu himself. Close quote. The yogi established a temple in the jungle near the village of Sharadaipur, and as he exhibited many mystic potencies, numerous people came to serve him. It was predicted in the concocted scriptures of the Atibaris that there would be a battle on the 14th of Chaitra, that's March, April, and that Mahavishnu would then reveal his four-armed form. This news was spread in the villages, and the yogi sent out a circular announcing that Bhagavan Mahavishnu, who had descended as Bhishikashen, would deliver India from the hands of the Europeans by killing them all. He also...
Did he have a chakra?
He was going to manifest that. You can imagine how I mean, he got thousands of followers. The British were like freaking out. You know? So he also began to exhibit various miracles to impress the people. He would sit erect in front of a fire and lean into the flames for some time and then return to an erect position without injury. He could read people's minds. He could read people's minds, instantly cure diseased persons, and manifest fire from his head. To those who lack the knowledge of the various yogic practices by which siddhis or powers are acquired, these events seemed extraordinary, even godly. However, to a serious student of the doctrines of yoga like the Thakur, such powers were simply an insignificant display of material power acquired by austerity with no real spirituality. Even to this day in India, unscrupulous persons who perform severe penances acquire these magical powers simply to get a large following and exploit their simple-minded followers for material advantage. Their naive followers often become convinced of the divinity of the rascals and worship them as God. Yet such persons are really no better than confidence men in one of the world's oldest con games. Tiny conditioned souls masquerade as God and convince other foolish conditioned souls to accept them as such. Two of the yogi's associates posed as Guna avatars, Brahma and Shiva. Living in the jungle not far from Bhubaneswar, he established a temple using funds that certain of the intimidated kings of Orissa had sent at his request. Some of the kings and villagers even sent women for his pleasure when he announced that he would hold a rasa dance in which he would exhibit his sole supremacy and power over all women. You can imagine the trouble this caused. When he actually had sexual relations with the wives of leading citizens of an Orissan town called Bringapur, it created an outcry among the husbands and other leaders there, and they took their case to the government officials. Mr. Ravenshaw, the English district commissioner, was at that time in charge of the Orissan division of the National British Indian government. After hearing from the leaders of Bringapur, he decided to entrust the case to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur for a thorough investigation. The case was very sensitive. Bhishikashen had gathered a large following of sympathizers, and he was seen as a potential threat to the security of the region, possibly capable of fomenting a local revolution. You can see, definitely possible. The Thakurs set out with the district superintendent, the chief of police, and a few constables. In the evening, just at sunset, the Thakur entered the jungle where the yogi was staying, near the village of Sharadaipur. He found many people sitting with the yogi. Many sick people had come to get cured by him and were glorifying him as an incarnation of God. Upon the arrival of the Thakur, the yogi rose from his throne and questioned him. "Oh, Babu, I know that you are a Bengali and a magistrate. Why have you come here on this dark night?" Bhaktivinoda replied, "I have come to see you." Bhishikashen then rejoined, "That being the case, please sit down and hear my teachings. I am Mahavishnu, arising from the ocean of milk. I have come to this place, and very soon I will destroy all the Europeans, including the King of England. I have proclaimed I have proclaimed this everywhere. It sounds like Kamsa just before Krishna killed him. You know, I'm going to kill Nanda, kill Ugrasen, his father. In his autobiography, the Thakur says, I went at night to that jungle and spoke at length with Mahavishnu and revealed his vow to destroy the English Raj. After saying this...
So he was like setting him up, to you know, because he went to do the investigation, so he was praising him, and then the man came out with this seditious statement, so that there were witnesses and facts.
After saying this, Bhishikashain gave the Thakur a piece of palm leaf that had the very thing he had just said written on it in poetic form. Whoa, must be God. Exhibiting his mystic powers, the yogi began to describe everything about Thakur Bhaktivinoda in detail, mentioning his name, his mission, and warned him not to try to interfere with him. He also revealed that he knew full well about the men that the Thakur had brought with him and were hiding among the trees. The Thakur was not impressed, and he asked the yogi, if you are Mahavishnu, then why are you staying in this jungle and not at Puri, where Jagannath Dev resides? Now here's where it's serious blasphemy. The yogi replied haughtily, I am personally the Supreme Lord. There is no God at Puri. That so-called God Jagannath is merely a big slab of wood. Forgive me. Sri Chaitanya was my beloved devotee. and I will again make India the kingdom of the Hindus. For this reason I am living in the jungle. I know that you're an excellent court judge and a good devotee as well. When the Hindu kingdom is again established, I will give you a very good position in the government. I will make you the governor of the entire state of Orissa. So he's trying to bribe Bhaktivinoda. If he's so smart, why can't he understand that Bhaktivinoda is incorruptible? You know, he's a real charlatan. Bhaktivinoda then gravely replied, the tiny living entity can never become God. Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Shishupal, Dantabhakra, and many others who came under the influence of this arrogant mentality were all destroyed. The yogi, in order to impress the Thakur with his power, then called before him many people with incurable diseases, and in a moment he made them all well. One person was suffering with a spear wound. The yogi brought him under his control and produced some ashes which he smeared on the wound. Immediately the wounded man was well and free of pain. The Thakur was not moved, correctly seeing the yogi as an offender to the Lord, using God-given powers for his own self-aggrandizement. Leaving some spies to watch the yogi, the Thakur spent the night in a tent at Sharadaipur. The yogi had to be arrested, but first further investigation needed to be made. The next day, the Thakur traveled to the villages in the region to gather reports from the people. In some villages he heard praise, but others were angry about the yogi's affairs with married women, and were anxious that this fever of attraction to the yogi might spread to the women of their own villages and result in scandal and humiliation. Thereafter, the Thakur gave the order to arrest the yogi, and seeing his men fearful, he personally led them, bringing with him 2 police inspectors, a police superintendent, and over 100 armed policemen. They arrived in the early morning hours. A sacrificial fire was burning in front of Bhishikashain, and well over 1,000 followers were present. Many were offering prayers to the yogi. The Thakur and the policemen appeared on the perimeter of the crowd. When the yogi's followers saw the red-turbaned policemen, armed with rifles and bayonets, many of them began to flee. News was quickly spread to the villages that the government had sent an army to arrest the avatar of God. Bhishikashain sat observing all of this calmly. Bhaktivinoda Thakur approached him. There was a short silence. Babu, what is the meaning of all this? Asked the yogi with apparent serenity. They have come to take you. It is the governor's order that you should be brought to Puri, replied the Thakur. The yogi replied harshly, who is this governor? I am king, for I am the supreme Godhead and master of all the universes. I bow down before no one. Let us see who is able to take me away from this place. If you do not go peacefully, we will be obliged to take you away by force, replied the Thakur. Becoming enraged,